Greetings and welcome to the 63rd episode of Morrowind Modding Showcases, and as always, I'm your host, Axeljk, and today we're actually celebrating our 3rd anniversary. 3 years ago today, give or take a week, we started this channel in response to Melkor's Future of Morrowind thread, as a way to promote and show off the many amazing works that Morrowind modders have created over the years. And since then, we've grown and expanded the channel quite a bit, to include not just showcases, but interviews, tutorials, modding competitions, and so much more. Almost all the success of this channel goes to our amazing community of modders, and those of you who still, for some reason, keep tuning in to hear me just ramble on and on about mods each week. And when we first started this venture, I don't think I could have imagined it would, last this long. But with any luck, we'll continue to showcase mods for several years to come. But anyway, you're not here to, listen to me go on and on about our 3rd anniversary. You're here for mods, and as always, for our odd-numbered episodes, we have another 13 random-themed mods for your viewing pleasure. And of course, you'll find down the links for all of them, along with timestamp annotations, conflict information, and mod cleaning warnings down in the video description below. So let's go ahead and get started with our popular mod of the week, which this time around is Wesley Presents Elves of the Unseen by Wesley. Now, this is one of the numerous better body space race mods that Wesley has released over the years, and really has to be said that Wesley is the king of making new playable races. His mods are pretty much the highest quality on the market, which is why I was somewhat shocked to find out that we've apparently showcased none of them after 3 years, despite the large number of popular releases he's made. And so we're going to, be rectifying that, oversight a bit today and in the future. And this mod basically adds a new race of elves called the Unseen, based apparently on a race found in Hellboy 2: The Golden Army. This is a rather, feature-complete race with about a half dozen different faces to choose from, and over a dozen different hairstyles for both genders, making for a nice range of customization that includes things like facial tattoos, freckles, and, multiple eye colors. And to start out with, we're going to check out one of the male characters, the Unseen. And of course, he's not wearing any clothes, so I can show you the full body here. Or, well, mostly the full body. This mod does come with both an underwear and nude version, and obviously we're going to be using the underwear version here. And regardless, the Unseen are a fairly pale race, really the exact opposite to the local Dunmer in terms of, skin tone. And perhaps just a little bit evil looking, if I'm being, completely honest. The real draw here is, of course, the faces though. And as you should expect from Wesley, each face model is beautifully rendered and detailed, with a number of high-quality hairstyles. And moving on, we're next going to be taking a look at one of the female characters of the Unseen. And to call me crazy, but you'll notice the male and female characters here both sport, fairly similar types of hairstyles they can choose from. But of course, they all look fantastic. And you'll notice she has some interesting tattoos around the eyes. And indeed, the eyes are fairly striking, with that sort of, gold coloring that matches the hair color here. And of course, this isn't just a new race mod, it's also an items mod that includes some new clothing and armor for the Unseen here, with a rather dark and again I have to say, just slightly evil looking set of armor here. It's just that combination of, black armor and red cloth that is typically associated with evil characters. And I really don't know much about the Hellboy universe, but these really do seem like your classic sort of villain-like characters, or vampires possibly. But in any event, this is a light armor, and it should be mentioned that the Unseen are a magic and stealth-based race. They make for good mages or thieves, generally speaking. And here you can see some of the new clothing added here, which is a bit less, evil-looking, given that these are a more, warmish blue color of robes and all that. And again, I have to say that Wesley's work here is, as always, quite excellent. Particularly again with these face and hair models, and I know I keep saying that, but you gotta love the detail here. I mean, you can actually see the freckles on this character's face, and that's an option for both the male and female characters, I believe. And of course, the robes and armor make for a nice addition, and I sort of skipped over this earlier, but you can actually find the new robes and armor in Ghost Gate. They're technically free for the taking, minus the, trip through the remote wilderness, of course. Now, before we move on, I did just want to show off this armor again with a female character, because it does, look slightly different depending on the gender of the character wearing it. And of course, either way, while it is evil looking, it does make for an excellent addition to anyone's armory, and I definitely recommend giving this mod a try if you're, looking for a new race to play as. And we'll have to cover a lot more of Wesley's new race mods in the future, because there's quite a few of them that we haven't showcased yet. For our House Mod of the Week this week, we have Abandoned Outpost by Axeljk. And this mod adds a small quest for you to do at Ghost Gate, involving the tracking down and clearing out of an old outpost in the Ashlands, long since abandoned. It seems the temple would like to take it back and re-garrison it in order to keep an eye on the area and, stop the spread of blighted creatures and cultists a bit. And you'll find this outpost here, seemingly the same as whenever the temple abandoned it the first time. And it's a rather nice looking area, assuming of course you don't mind all the ash, with a fair bit of clutter out here along the exterior, and with what seems like a smithy and the tools of a once manned outpost that kept an eye on the region. Inside though, the outpost is quite dark and it has more than a little bit of a pest problem, with giant beetles scurrying around everywhere. You'll have to kill them all for the quest of course, and they shouldn't put up too much of a fight for most characters. But of course the real issue is the lighting in here, not to mention all the detritus left behind by the previous owners. Luckily they left some brooms and torches behind, and you can activate them to clean up the house a bit and relight all the candles, torches and lanterns to make for a now rather cozy and atmospheric looking abode. And this is a really nice looking house, or, outpost overall, with a small entry hall that has a small space for dining, as well as a sort of workshop area where you'll find a weapons table and also a small alchemy lab. It's always important to brew a few potions before heading back out into the Malagomur region. And there's also a couple of bedrooms. One is really more of a barracks to be used by the rank and file, with more than a little bit of clutter left behind by the previous owners. And there's also a second bedroom that was probably used by an officer at one point, but is now free for the taking, so you can, use it for yourself. And overall, this is a rather unique, atmospheric and charming abode that you do have to, work a bit towards before you can get it, given the quests and the fighting and all that. But should you actually complete the quest, you won't be alone out here. You'll have a couple of NPCs hanging around to each provide services such as, a few hundred bartering gold, spell making and enchanting, not to mention the fellow outside, who can repair your equipment for you. And there's even a few scripts attached to the alchemy lab here, including an auto-ingredient storage container. And really, this is just a pretty cool house mod to check out. This week's gameplay mod of the week is Transaltillus Shops, Common and Beast by Bryss, Phoenix and Fliggerty. And this one adds 2 new shops to the game world of Morrowind, which are, quite different from anything you've seen before, most likely. Each of these shops is hidden away from would-be prying eyes, and has a rather unique design, like this one, which is technically contained in a sort of magical realm with views looking out into the sea. And there's some really nice and scenic areas here. But of course, this is a gameplay mod, and a pretty big one at that, and we're going to be, getting to that gameplay aspect here in a minute. But by now, you guys probably know that I really, appreciate good interior design. And there's definitely some, cool design elements that I just want to show off you a bit first. And this is a bit of an older mod. The Transaltillus shops came out around 2006 with the goal of providing a way to change your character's appearance after you had already started the game. And there's actually quite a bit of dialogue, lore, and background about how the system works. Basically adding in a new type of magic that's been mastered by only a handful of NPCs that can be used to, change your race, hair, face, or gender. And, keep in mind that this is a sort of experimental mod. It works fine so long as you don't push it too much. And the authors advise you only change your appearance once per play session, which is to say about only once for each time you load up the game before, closing out again. The reason for this is that the game engine wasn't really built to handle the player changing their, race and gender all the time, so it can cause a few issues with save games if you do it multiple times in a row, potentially even corrupting saves, so don't do that and you should be fine. And in any event, you can buy vouchers to see one of the various mages here to perform a physical change, which will bring up this menu here, where you can choose a new race, face, hairstyle, and of course gender if you so desire. And you'll notice there's a ton of new mixed races added by this mod to cover a variety of different combinations of races, and I think there's over a dozen new races here, some of which are pretty detailed. And we'll be taking a closer look at least one of them later on. But in the meantime, since I'm playing as a Dunmeri male, to demonstrate this new gameplay system, I'm going to change my character to a Breton female, which is, of course, a pretty big change. And once you've decided on the appearance that you want, click OK, and the mage here will, give you a ring that will provide you with some new racial powers, which is some sort of limitation they ran into with the original mod, I think. And anyway, you can see my character's new looks here. And this is a great way to change one of your existing characters without having to create a whole new character from scratch. But wait, we're not quite done here. Like I said before, this mod, or as I should say 2 mods, since we're, showcasing 2 of them here, adds 2 shops to the game. One that specializes in the common races, such as the various elf and human races, and a second shop that deals in the beast races, which you'll find hidden somewhere in Vivek. And once again, there's a very interesting and unique style and design to this interior here. Though it's a bit on the dark side, and the architecture is designed around supporting races that can, jump to high heights, like say Khajiit or Argonians. And you'll even meet characters from around Morrowind in these shops who have already undergone changes, like, say, Thorana, one of the mages of the Telvanni who has chosen to become a Khajiit, and, this is really little more than an amusing addition. And of course, the actual NPCs themselves haven't changed, so there's, no weird conflicts with other mods out there. And anyway, we're going to go through the changing process again, this time for, beast race characters. And you'll notice there's a lot of new beast races in particular included in this mod, mostly of the Khajiit variety, to account for some of the other races that are mentioned specifically in lore, like you've got the Manes and the more human-like Khajiits, and also special Black Panther and Silver Star Khajiits. There's just a lot of different options here, with tons of new face and hair options to go along with them. And as much as I'd like to, take a detailed look at each one, this showcase is, already getting a bit on the long side already, so let's just go ahead and move on. And you can see the new character I finally decided to go with here, using the new Silver race, which is a really quite striking looking style of Khajiit. They have these just, beautiful multicolored eyes that are, really quite interesting, as well as large fangs and a great abundance of hair. And there's a lot we're going to be skipping over here, but suffice to say, this is a very original and unique mod, and definitely worth checking out. And next up, we have our Town Mod of the Week, and this week we have Citadine Docks by Lorne and Princess Docks by Princess Sampa. And now, yes, you did hear that right, we're actually showcasing off two separate mods in this category, because they do similar things. Only one does so with a massive and potentially conflict-heavy expansion of Citadine, and the other does a much smaller expansion that mainly focuses on the primary feature of the former, namely offering both travel services from Citadine to other coastal settlements. And we're showcasing both here since not everyone is going to want the same thing, and there's a very real chance that you might just prefer Princess Docks over the older but at one time very popular Citadine Docks. But anyway, we'll focus more on the differences between the two in a minute. First, we're going to start out this category by taking a detailed look at Lorne's classic and Planet Elder Scrolls Hall of Fame winner, Citadine Docks. Now, this is a massive expansion of Citadine that adds 2 new districts to this otherwise small coastal village, including a massive harbour, as well as a smaller commercial district on the other side of town. And, you could also call this a sort of mod compilation, since I know for a fact it merges 2 other mods into the content here, a separate Citadine expansion mod, and for some reason a random Citadine house mod, which is, a bit strange, but again, this is an older mod. We're talking about 2003 to 2004, so there's going to be a few, oddities about the design here. Either way, it turns Citadine into a really large and thriving settlement, and it goes without saying that it will conflict with every other Citadine town mod out there, as well as, of course, Morrowind Rebirth. And moving over to the other side of town here, you can see one of the new districts of Citadine, which includes a few residential houses, shops and a tavern, as well as a number of guard towers. And overall, this one has some fairly creative exterior designs, though I don't expect much from the interiors here. Most of these are, copy and pasted or just of really poor quality in general. But we are going to take a look at some of the better interiors here, including a large general goods shop that has a set of merchant vendors selling a variety of wares, from arms and armor to alchemy, books, and, a ton of other random items, each with about 500 to 700 bartering gold. And there's also, as previously mentioned, a house mod merchant here, which adds a small but cozy and atmospheric abode for you to move into, right after getting off the boat. And, it is a nice house, probably the best looking one that you'll find in this mod. But moving on, the real feature of this town expansion is really the various boat captains who offer, travel to almost every other coastal settlement in the game. I mean, you can catch a ride to Ebonheart, Ard-Velothi, Ard-Redania, which isn't even a settlement in Vanilla Morrowind, Dagenfell, Center of Mora, Voss, and, so on and so forth. It's a really huge convenience feature to have a transportation hub like this, but at the same time, Morrowind's original travel routes were part of the, game's charm, so you might not actually like this feature depending on, what you prefer. But regardless, we're now going to be taking a look at Princess Docks, which is a much smaller mod that adds a rather simple and, modest shack district harbour just outside of Citadine. We have just a few storage shacks and a couple of ships that can take you to other locations. You'll notice that Princess Docks is a lot less framerate heavy than, Citadine Docks, and it takes up, far less space and is compatible with a larger number of mods. Plus it's, newer and as such has less issues underneath the hood. And real quick, we can take a look inside one of the storage shacks, but there's not really much to see here. The interiors aren't really the main draw of this mod, and you won't find any new shops here. Instead, the main focus of this mod is again a transportation network, connecting Citadine to other coastal settlements, like Ebonheart, Vivec, and, oddly enough, Mournhold for some reason. And this is a not a much simpler version that's a good choice if you just want to travel from, sea to nearby boat without all the big town expansions. For our items of the week this week, we have Ruby Inn by Crank Gorilla, and now this one adds a small Halal Inn right outside of Voss, which is, a bit of an odd architecture choice for the Grayslands region, but all well, minor detail. One of the more distinct features that you're going to notice right away here is the rather massive ruby crystal sticking out of this fine establishment, which is, probably where the name, of course, comes from. And inside you'll find a very colourful and lively tavern full of drunk NPCs, off-duty guards, random adventurers, and other unsavory elements. The tavern itself has a very unique and atmospheric design, with a lot of cool decorations, and even a dancing platform and hot tub for some strange and curious reason. And I should mention that the author has a warning that this mod contains adult content and nudity, but that said, I didn't really see any nudity myself, and so long as you have an underwear version of Better Bodies installed, you should be fine. Otherwise, a number of the dancers will probably, appear nude, but that's no worse than the Surround House of Earthly Delights in that case. Now, as you might expect from a Crank Gorilla mod, there's a lot of modders resources in use here, and nearly every NPC in this tavern has some new items to sell you, whether it's some new drinks, weapons, armor, miscellaneous items, books, clothing, or even a ton of fruit imported from the distant lands of Cyrodiil. There's a ton of new stuff for you to purchase and collect, hence why this is in our, items mod category after all. And all the NPCs also have some unique dialogue, though not all of it is necessarily lore-friendly, and really that goes for the entire mod, I would say. But anyway, just moving on, this mod also includes an apartment for you to use as a home away from home that's rather nicely decorated and furnished, including a bed, some containers, a teleport ring, and several new books for you to read. And overall, this is certainly a rather interesting mod to check out. This week's question of the week is Discoveries and Adventures by JMK, and this is a really, fairly massive quest mod adding a new faction to the game world of Morrowind called the Adventurers Guild. And yes, I know there's other mods out there that add factions by the same name, so that's a little confusing, I suppose. But anyway, this one adds a number of guild chapters to some of the less utilized cities, like Plesiad, Nissus, and Tel Run. And for the most part, these are fairly plain and small buildings that blend in with the towns that they're in. And anyway, going inside one of these guild branches, each chapter of the Adventurers Guild will usually have a unique appearance, as well as 2 quest NPCs. One for giving out quests to discover things out in the world, and one for giving out quests relating to adventures, like the name of the mod would imply. And to explain in a bit more detail, these discovery quests usually involve tracking down and finding Easter egg locations or other unique locations found in the vanilla game, with maybe a couple of, modded locations added in for good measure. So you might get a quest to find Roland's Tears, or a quest to find the Mud Crab Merchant, and you'll get paid for each discovery you make, which is a nice way to get rewarded and directed to locations that you might not otherwise know about. And on the other hand, you have adventures which are more of your, typical sort of quests, which involve everything from dungeon delving, fetching items, and of course the dreaded escort missions. And in total, there's over 40 new quests included here, with probably close to 15 to 20 hours of content, making this a really massive mod to check out, ideal for those who need something more to do. Now, as you might imagine with so much new content, there's naturally going to be a number of new dungeons for you to discover and fight through, including some rather large tombs that you can explore with a teammate from the Adventurers Guild, and a lot of these new locations use their own unique tile sets, something that's really to be expected at this point from a JMK mod, since he makes retextured tile sets for nearly all of his mods. And some of these dungeons will even have traps that you'll need to avoid. They're pretty difficult to spot, so you'll need to be careful. And there's also a lot of just random and fun things included here, such as hot air balloon rides that you can take around Plesiad with actual working hot air balloons. And these just, tour the city from the skies on an automated path. And they are a bit on the slow side. A full ride takes about 3 to 4 minutes, so fair warning. Then there are some pretty nice views from up here, I have to say. But before we move on, there's a lot more for us to show off here. Discoveries and Adventures adds a lot of new locations to the game world, including new Duma ruins you can find just off the Bitter Coast region. And naturally, all these new locations are going to be quest related. At one point or another, you'll get quests to take you to, each one of them. And who knows, you might even find yourself in a magical realm, teleported to some mage's tower surrounded by his Gortons and a number of Daedra that you'll have to fight through in order to get to the tower proper. There's just a ton of unique locations here, and before we leave off, there's one more I'd like to show you, a realm of sand and desert with old Imperial style ruins sticking out of the sands, for various, deadly encounters and hostile opponents. And in addition to over 40 new quests, Discoveries and Adventures adds close to a dozen new dungeons and locations like this one, with a number of challenges for you to face. And while this mod is perfectly fine to start playing at a low level, some of these end quests will end up, requiring a character of about level 20 or so, and there's just a ton of cool content here, and I definitely recommend giving it a try. Next up, we are on Landmass Mod of the week, and this week we have Wolfen Castle by the Wolfen. Now, some of you, probably those of you who've been around for a while, will most likely remember this mod because at one point in time it was extremely popular, though probably less so these days. It was the first castle mod to be released from Morrowind, coming out in June of 2002, less than 2 months after the game was released, and because it was such an early mod that added a new landmass with a new castle to live in, it was one of the first mods that saw the potential of Morrowind's new construction set, and it more or less proved that anyone could pick this game up and within weeks be making their own giant land masses, which was, a really big draw at the time. But anyway, getting back to the actual mod content here, Wolfen Castle adds a new fairly sizable castle just south of Ebonheart on a new landmass, and the castle itself is really the main focus here. You'll see there's a bit of a village in the castle courtyard, but the mod was never actually finished, so these buildings have no interiors. And there was an expansion that was released later on that added interiors and more buildings by a different author, but that mod is a bit of a mixed bag quality-wise. Still, we've included a download link for the expansion down below if you'd like to check it out. And as you might imagine, this is actually a house mod, and as previously stated, it was incredibly popular at one point, with tens of thousands of downloads and one of the first mods to be inducted into the Planet Elder Scrolls Hall of Fame. And while it is a bit on the old side, it's still, perfectly functional, including an entry hall with a lounge, a hidden storage area for putting your treasure, and a number of other rooms, like an armory and forge area, which is, mostly cosmetic. I mean, you can't actually use any of this stuff. A training area with practice dummies, which is again cosmetic, and there's even a set of magic labs with a rather atmospherically lit room that includes a set of alchemical equipment that you can use for your, own various brews. But this home isn't technically speaking free for the taking. There's actually a bit of a background story here, and in order to claim the home as your own, with a, teleport ring and all included, you'll need to find the key down in the crypt, which really isn't a difficult fight or anything, but, it's something you have to do first. And going back to the rest of the castle here, you'll find a number of other rooms, including a dining room, with a number of tables that can seat a fair number of staff or guests if you have company over. And there's also a small kitchen, of course. And the castle is well finished, but, a bit light on decorations. Keep in mind that this mod was released almost immediately after the game itself, so in comparison to, more recent mods, it might seem a little bare. This is particularly noticeable up on the second floor, which is home to nearly a dozen bedrooms. These are mixed-use bedrooms, meant for, NPC staff, guests, or companions if you have any. And ideally speaking, you should probably use an NPC staff mod like Staff Agency to help fill this place out a bit, because otherwise it does seem a little empty. And again, a bit on the bare side, but that's just my personal opinion. And also up here on the second floor is a communal set of chambers where guests can go to relax with a scenic set of gardens in the middle, and seating all around, including a small set of bookshelves with books that you can, just sit back and read in these rather scenic chambers. And finally, there's the master bedroom, which is a bit of a different style than the rest of the castle here, but nonetheless well finished with plenty of space to add your own decorations. And while Wolfen Castle may be an older mod that does sadly conflict with how built, it's still a pretty cool piece of modding history, offering a glimpse at the modding scene right after the game first came out, and a lot of us old-timers do have a bit of a nostalgia for it. But before we finish up our showcase here, you can see the world map here, and Wolfen Castle isn't too far away from Ebonheart, but still probably within range of a tower built conflict. For NPC Mod Week this week, we have Cliff Races by Danae, and now this is a rather interesting mod that does three things. The first is it adds a greater variety of cliff races to the game world of Morrowind, including young cliff races, mature cliff races, brood mothers, razorbacks, and new textures for the disease cliff races. And each new cliff racer has different magical attacks now that they normally only cast once, including poison-based attacks for the disease cliff races. And they also have a chance to drop some new loot. And that's really the second thing that this mod does, is it adds new items to the loot drops that you get when you kill cliff races, including meat, weapons, and a few other items. Some of these actually have new models, and we'll be taking a closer look at these here in a minute, but first we're going to show off a few more cliff racers here. You can see some of the Razorbacks attacking me now, and they're a bit tougher than, normal cliff racers. Plus they have some serious magical attacks that'll be certain to cause issues, including paralyzing you, silence to stop your magical enchantments, and one or two other negative magical effects. You can tell them right away by their blue skin tone, and they also come in multiple forms, like most of the cliff racers here, with young cliff racers being the weakest and broodmothers being the strongest. Now you might be thinking to yourself, why would anyone want more cliff racers? And that really brings us to the third feature of this mod, because as you kill more and more cliff racers, they'll gradually become more and more wary of you, and eventually they'll start avoiding you altogether. And, kill enough of them and they may just start disappearing from the island completely, leaving nothing for your good buddy Jib to do but claim credit for the results. And you can see some more of these wary cliff racers here, and basically these wary cliff racers will try and avoid you, even fleeing from you if you get too close, rather than, immediately attacking you. And this is a really nice and immersive way to deal with the cliff racer problem without removing them outright. And real quick, here you can see some of the new items included here, with a new cliff racer dagger and 2 new ingredients in the form of cliff racer meat that you can now, loot from the corpses. And there's also cliff racer arrows and other items, but overall this is a pretty nice addition to the cliff racers of Morrowind. This week's new Meshes and Textures Mod of the Week is Ice Blade of the Monarch version 2 by Flash313 aka Rumiros. And now if this sounds familiar, that's because we actually showcased the original version of this mod in a previous episode, possibly, I don't know, maybe episode 53, about 9 or 10 months ago or so. But Ramirez has released a new and updated version, so we're going to be looking at that today. Both replaces the first version that was released over a year ago, and this new one uses PBR, or physical-based rendering, for improved graphics. But this replacer does also support Vanilla Morrowind, and also OpenMW. Now, personally, I was a big fan of version 1.0, and while this new version is quite clearly different in terms of, style and design, I'm honestly having a hard time deciding which I like better. In some ways, fairly similar, but you'll notice the new replacer uses a single line of Daedric lettering along the blade hilt, as opposed to, 2 lines in the older version. And there's also some, rather noticeable changes to the rest of the hilt here, particularly the tip of the hilt, which has a rather striking gem on it now. And anyway, we'll be taking a closer look at this blade, both with, physical base rendering enabled and without it, to show how this replacer looks, and whether you prefer the old replacer or this one. They're both certainly of extremely high quality and well worth checking out for yourself. I do hope Ramirez will continue the amazing work he's done so far, and as I've said so many times already, hopefully we can see a complete replacer package from him sometime in the future. Next up, we have our Modest Resource Mod of the Week, which this week is animated targets and practice dummies for our Superstar. And this is actually both a modest resource and a sort of immersion and gameplay mod, I would say, since it adds animated and fully functional practice dummies to the game world of Morrowind, replacing the old static practice dummies that didn't really do anything when you hit them, with new and improved dummies that'll fall apart after you hit them enough with a sword or a battle axe or what have you. And this mod also adds animated practice targets to pretty much every major Imperial fort in the game, so you can practice your archery by firing shots at these targets, and get the rather satisfying effect of seeing your targets fall back as you hit them. And in total, this mod places over 60 practice dummies and archery targets to the game world of Morrowind, mainly to locations like Imperial forts, the various branches of the Fighters Guild, and sometimes around the occasional guard tower. But of course, this is also a modest resource, and you've doubtless seen some of these animated targets and dummies and other mods, since we've showcased a few mods that have included this resource in the past. You're free to add this resource to any mod that you might be working on. And they're certainly perfect if you're adding a practice room to your house mod, or if you're building a fort, or, just want to add them to various areas of a dungeon, or what have you. And whatever you want to use them for, this is certainly a cool resource and well worth checking out. For our underrated mod of the week this week, we have Pile Dwelling by Osiris. And now, yes, this is indeed another house mod, only with a decidedly unique design that, takes full advantage of the vanilla docking resources found in regular old Morrowind, to create an exterior-based outdoor abode right on the water outside of Cedonine. That said, this home isn't free though. You'll need to kill the guardian protecting this place before you can move in, but once that's done, you'll find a very creative and charming seaside abode to call your own that's rather well finished. The storage areas, a practice area, a few bookshelves with display items on here and there, and also a charming little dining room that looks off into the western inner sea. along with a study and a small bedroom that's hidden behind the rather excessively used wall screens in here. And this really isn't a big place or anything, but again, it is, a fairly unique abode. You don't see a lot of these Axeljk-based homes around, and this one is fairly well crafted, even if it does have a bit of overpowered loot lying around. And anyway, one of the things I love about this mod is the lighting. So we're going to take a look at this home at a few different times a day, because I would argue the real advantage here is the excellent atmosphere of this abode. There's a really good use of light sources here to make this abode show up even during the darkest hours of the night, and to the red lanterns that go all along the ceiling, combined with the orange glow of the torches and the fireplace, make for a very cozy and charming home on the sea. And I just have to point out the wind chimes and wall hangings dangling from the ceiling here, which again helps to make for a just amazingly atmospheric house to call your own. And finally, before we move on, I'm going to do a quick flyby of this abode late at night, where you can really see the lighting effects in action. And while this is an older mod, and it does need to be cleaned of dirty references before installing, I just absolutely love this simple yet, and I know I'm overusing this word again, atmospheric design here. And if you're looking for a home near Cedardine that offers a little something different, I would certainly recommend giving this one a try. This week's Blast from the Past mod of the week is More by Outpost, and after all these years, I'm still not entirely sure how to pronounce her name, but anyway, this mod is going to be familiar to a lot of you. It's commonly considered one of the best house mods from Morrowind, adding a large lordly soul manor right outside the city of Saran. And truth be told, I've been meaning to showcase this mod for years now, but I kept holding off because I wanted to do a in memoriam video for Outpost, aka Lord Devil, one of the most influential members of the early modding community who sadly passed away in 2008. She was one of the great reviewers on Morrowind Summit and Planet Elder Scrolls, providing detailed feedback and helping hundreds of new modders improve their skills, including myself. And as Lord Devil, she was also one of the Planet Elder Scrolls admins, who would go the extra mile checking each mod that was submitted to the website for bugs, dirty references, and other potential issues. If you've ever explored Morrowind modding history, you've no doubt seen some of her notes on various mods included in the admin comments section. All of her notes on these mods were ported over to Morrowind modding history after Planet Elder Scrolls went down, and they're oftentimes the only information available on what a particular mod does. And now I wanted to showcase this mod today because, well, I've sort of decided that I'm really not the sort of person who should be doing a in memoriam video of any sort, but More is such an amazing mod by an extremely talented modder that it does absolutely deserve to be showcased. And what better time to showcase it than, on our 3rd anniversary. But to get back to the showcase here, More is a pretty massive house mod that's designed to fit a number of different playstyles and characters of pretty much all levels, with several areas designed for different types of players. The first section we'll be taking a look at here is a small guest cottage located at the base of More, and it's a fairly lore-friendly and well-finished abode of everything that lower-level characters might need, including a small kitchen, dining area, a bedroom with a spare bed, and downstairs you'll find storage, display bookshelves, and even an alchemy lab, all in this rather cozy little house here. And heading up into the main manor house, you'll see pretty much right away why this is, such a highly regarded house mod, as this manor is absolutely lavish in design, with a beautiful entry hall, including gardens and, open-air chambers that lead into an extremely cozy lounge area with a roaring fireplace and seats for, company. You'll especially notice the walls here, which have a unique and beautiful, set of designs and paintings on them, unlike anything you might see anywhere else in Morrowind. And across the hall, you'll find the dining room, which includes all unique dishware, including cups, plates, mugs, and, much more. Now, More was actually included into the Planet Elder Scrolls Hall of Fame posthumously in 2008 after Lord Devil's passing, achieving a lifetime total of some 11,000 downloads, making it one of the most popular house mods released from Morrowind. And again, it's pretty easy to see why, given the evident high quality of this beautiful abode. But I am, kind of gushing a bit. You guys know I tend to do that with some of these mods, and I just really love exploring and showing off a masterpiece like this. But anyway, back to the showcase here. This manor naturally comes with a small kitchen, including a servant who can provide you with a few goods in case, you're hungry or thirsty. And now one of the more unique rooms in this abode is without question the library, which is, well, interesting in terms of its design. It looks out into an aquarium where you can watch fish and, for some strange reason, skeletons as you read books in the comfort of your own chair. And this is just a really atmospheric and cool room to, stop in at every once in a while. And like any good house mod, you'll naturally find a display hall, including a number of chests to, store your extra loot into. And one thing you're really going to notice here is that pretty much each of these rooms has a unique look and style to it, with furnishings, rugs and wallpapers that is different and distinct for each set of rooms, which adds a rather nice bit of variety to this charming abode. And anyway, there's also a larger dedicated alchemy lab in the main house, in addition to that smaller alchemy lab that we saw, back in the guest house. And there's a number of tables in here that are just lined with ingredients, ready to be brewed into potions. And you'll also find a set of alchemical equipment for your convenience in here. And because this is a right and proper mansion, you won't just find, one display hall in here, but rather two in this massive abode. And this one is a bit larger than the one that we just, looked at before, including proper display cases, the stuff you loot into, and also podiums that can be used to place on the display mannequins if you happen to have a mannequin mod installed. Now, unlike most large house mods of this size, you'll of course find a pool and a set of bathing chambers down the basement, complete with a friendly set of dolphins to, keep you company while you go out for a swim. And there's also a few tables and chairs down here for those occasions when you just want to relax by the pool. And of course, like any house mod, there's going to be a master bedroom, and this one is no different, including a fairly lavish and sizable set of private chambers for your personal use, with a small set of gardens, a large master bed, a fair bit of, storage, not to mention your own private lounge, and a roaring fireplace to provide an absolutely cozy but opulent atmosphere. You also find a few new books and journals included with your new home that provides a bit of a background story to this place, which is, as always, a rather nice touch to include. And due to this being a mansion and all that, you'll of course find a number of servants' quarters, including their own private dining area, and naturally a few beds secluded away from the more, open parts of the manor. And although this abode only comes with 2 servants to begin with, there's plenty of room to, move in some of your own staff, like companions, or NPC staff from, a mod like staff agency, or any of the other dozen or so odd companion and servant mods out there. And unlike perhaps most of the major house mods out there, Craig & More does provide services even for the more, shall we say, unsavory elements, with quarters specially designed for the more darkly inclined, and more specifically vampires. So even those who prowl the night will find something to like in Craig & More, with a special crypt just to them, including a coffin to sleep in, and cattle to feed upon. There's even a few small crypt-style display halls down here for those who prefer a more, sort of evil theme of abode. And lastly, I wanted to take a look at the guest wing of the manor here, which includes beds for any guests or companions that you might have staying with you. And these are nice and cozy quarters, including, surprisingly, a bit of a pub and bar attached to them, with a dining area and even a dedicated servant who can provide food or drinks. And all in all, this is truly an amazing house mod and one of the great classics of the Morrowind community. I'd really highly recommend giving it a try. Finally, for our bonus mod of the week this week, we have Landscape Waterfalls MW by Eldermaster28. And this is a rather simple landscape mod that adds a number of waterfalls to the landscapes of Morrowind, most of which are natural looking waterfalls that you'll find outside of various towns and cities, as well as out in the wilderness. And something the author pointed out here is that apparently there's only one waterfall out in the Axeljk world space in vanilla Morrowind, which does seem a bit odd, particularly given the 5,000 waterfalls that you'll find on the entirely built mainland. But anyway, we'll be taking a look at a few of these waterfalls here, and they can be found in several regions, such as the West Gash, the Grazelands, and also the Bitter Coast, as you can see here. And these range from small waterfalls, like the one we just saw outside of Citadine, to some rather massive waterfalls, like this one outside of Vos. And, these are all quite scenic, and for the most part, they do blend in rather well with the surrounding environment. Personally, I love the little bits of detail in here with the plant life growing alongside these little streams. And these are just some, really nice atmospheric additions to the world to add a little bit of colour to various locations around Morrowind. Though it should be noted that this mod does have a slight incompatibility with the On the Rocks replacer. The conflict is a bit minor, and you won't notice it for the most part, but it is quite evident with some of these waterfalls. And anyway, we're going to take a look at just one more waterfall here before we move on. And this one is in the Azores Coast region, and I just really like how it blends into the landscape here. This is right outside that one monastery, that's part of the Morrowind's main quest, and this does make this location feel a lot more, epic when you see it for the first time. But anyway, that wraps up everything for today's episode. We've covered a lot of mods over the last 3 years, and I hope we can, continue covering many more mods going into the future. Thanks for watching, and thank you so much for your continued support of this channel. I'll see you all next time for our next batch of mods.